Owen's here with a bit of a bleak moment, really, in the history of photography, the bankruptcy of Kodak.
No great surprise, Stuart, to anyone who's following the stock of this company, but absolutely a very bleak day, as you say, in the evolution of Kodak. In fact, if it's not the oldest, it's got to be one of the oldest camera companies. Been around since the 1930s and yet has filed in the US for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Its share price absolutely decimated over the last few years. At one point, 5 years ago, Kodak shares worth around $30. Just yesterday on Wall Street, they were trading at 50 cents. Yes, 50 cents. That's a huge collapse in its share price. Not quite the end of the road for this company just yet, though. In fact, in its statement, Kodak did say it thinks it should be able to reorganize itself by 2013. So that bankruptcy protection gives it a little bit of protection from creditors right now. Remember, this is a company that made losses over the past few years or so of around $2 billion, never really made it back.
Does give me flashbacks to 20, 30 years ago with the little film boxes. I can't help it. It is a bit of a classic tale, though, isn't it, of failing to keep up with the times, really?
Well, absolutely, yeah. Of course, you mentioned that the Instamatic, for example, was really one of the last significant cameras that Kodak made. Of course, it had its core business in actually printing photos. That's what made it famous. And yet, it's a cruel irony, perhaps, for this company that it actually invented the first digital camera back in the mid-70s, and yet shelved it because it didn't want digital film to impinge upon its core business. It felt that it would threaten it. What a cruel irony that is, because it's failed, as you say, to keep up with the digital age. The likes of Canon, name pretty much any manufacturer now, just steamed ahead of Kodak. In fact, I don't really know anybody that uses Kodak services anymore, bar a few printing services. That said, it does have many patents. It was well ahead of the game in developing patents. It's been in a few dust-ups with some companies like Samsung, like Apple over patents, but that might be the business that saves it, that side of the business that it might be able to reorganise and hopefully keep itself as a going concern.
Yeah, I hope it does keep going. And Kodak actually went under during a pretty good week for stocks, didn't it?
Yeah, another cruel irony, perhaps, that actually the markets are doing pretty well right now. Despite all of these Eurozone worries, the Eurozone European markets opening up fairly optimistically. Worth keeping an eye today on the French and the Spanish markets. Some big bond sales there. We'll get into that in a moment, but you can see there investors at least starting the day in Spain with a spring in their step. The IBEX around 0.2% up. The Asian markets as well, fairly robust days trading as well. The Nikkei ending the day around 1.2% up. The Hang Seng not far behind.
And eBay been leading some good earnings.
Yeah, this is partly why Wall Street was looking pretty good as well. On Wednesday, Stuart, you've got the likes of eBay reporting fourth quarter revenue up over $3.3 billion. That's a 35% rise. Here's a way to celebrate or even mark the downgrading of France, perhaps. What about a glass of Cointreau? Remy Cointreau's sales over Christmas, giving it a fairly good lift, 20% up. Just Carrefour, the French supermarket chain, missing analysts' expectations. Its fourth quarter sales down around 0.1%. Struggling a little bit in India right now, Carrefour.
OK, let's go back to more familiar territory, the Eurozone crisis. A glimmer of hope, really, for Greece. Private bondholders appear to be closing the gap with the government and bailout leaders over how much of their investments they're willing to write off. Their consent to halve around 200 billion euros of debt is crucial if Greece is to survive financially, but many obstacles remain to securing a 100% agreement. Here's Oliver Farry.
Talks continue to convince Greece's creditors to agree to a debt swap, something that will be needed for the country to get its next slice of bailout money. The talks pitch the Troika against holders of 200 billion euros of Greek debt, with the Greek government stuck in between. The Troika wants a reduction of interest rates on bond payments from the current 5% to 3 or even 2%. Athens is offering 3%, rising to 4.5% as the bond matures, but that would entail a loss of up to 68%, something bondholders may not be happy with. A deal is needed for Greece to secure the next chunk of the bailout, which it needs to make a 14.5 billion bond repayment on the 20th of March. But economist Yanis Varoufakis says the private sector involvement talks will ultimately be futile if the cycle of bailouts and austerity continues.
It is important. And it is important because if this PSI is declared a success, it will only be on paper a success. And if it gives our European leaders another excuse to give Greece another bailout on the basis of more austerity, this will be another nail in the coffin of the Eurozone.
Against a backdrop of increasing industrial unrest, there is optimism the talks will be successful. One senior Greek banker says a deal could be in place as early as next week.
So those talks continue today in Greece in hope of finding some common ground on those private investor write-offs. Just while we're talking Eurozone, Stuart, I mentioned bond sales as well. Look out for the markets in Spain and France. Big bond sales there today. In fact, the first really big test of investor confidence for France. That's because the government is selling around 9.5 billion euros in long-term bonds, anywhere up to 30 years. Remember, this is the first big test, as I say, since that downgrade, since France lost that AAA rating from Standard & Poor's. And this is a country, of course, that has to refinance around 200 billion euros of debt this year. Spain as well, a bond sale there, around 4.5 billion euros worth. Yields in Spain, remember, on 10-year bonds, around 5%. They have come down somewhat from those unsustainable levels of 7%, but still not a great outlook at the moment.
OK, well, and now another story for you, because a 5-year FBI investigation has uncovered some of the biggest insider trading scandals ever on Wall Street. But this one's believed to be the biggest, in fact. It's led to the arrest of 7 financial heavyweights who are accused of making huge profits with the help of an insider from the computer maker Dell.
Hedge fund founder Anthony Chiasson has his day in court, accused with 6 former colleagues of insider dealing that allowed them to commit market fraud on a massive scale. Chiasson and 3 others were arrested Wednesday as part of the FBI's longest-running investigation into insider dealing.
Good afternoon. The complaint implicates privileged professionals at no fewer than 5 different hedge funds and investment firms. It describes a circle of friends who essentially formed a criminal club whose purpose was profit and whose members regularly bartered lucrative inside information. It was a club where everyone scratched everyone else's back.
The group allegedly used privileged knowledge to illegally trade ahead of Dell's 2008 first and second quarterly earning announcements. Chiasson alone is believed to have netted $57 million in dividends.
7 men connected by friendship or business association, directly or through intermediaries, exploited quarterly earnings data from Dell or Indivia in advance of the public disclosure. When you have the answer sheet beforehand, it's pretty hard not to ace the test. But cheating on the test and getting away with it are 2 different things.
4 of the group were charged on Wednesday, and charges against the other 3 made public. Over 50 people have been arrested in federal investigations since 2009, including Galleon hedge fund boss Raj Rajapatnam, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison last October.
Yeah, that's your business. We can't stop talking about Kodak. It's a big moment, isn't it?
Well, it's safe to say I think Stuart and I are both old enough to remember actually printing off photos and sending them to Kodak to be developed. If you have got a Kodak Instamatic's classic, iconic camera, do drop us a line on Twitter and let me know. Let me know what you think about the demise of this company as well. Did Kodak call it too late on the digital business? You can reach me at OwenFrance24 on Twitter.
Always reminds me of my best mate. Spent all holiday taking pictures and then realised he hadn't even put film in the camera. Fantastic. Well done, Rick. He's probably not watching, but I've mentioned him anyway. Owen, thanks a lot. That's all from us today. Claire's got the latest, so after the break, stay with us.